Hey everybody, welcome to another lesson of learning Japanese. Today we are going to cover how to say to start verbing. So this could be something along the lines of to start reading a book, or to start exercising, or to start playing a certain sport, something along those lines. And you can see how this is a really common thing to say in everyday conversation, so let's just get at it. So the form that this grammar construct is going to take in the Japanese language is the pre-mas-form of the verb that you're going to start doing, plus the other verb, hajimeru, which means to start. And what happens here is when we use the pre-mas-form of whatever verb we need to convey, plus the verb hajimeru, and combine those, it's going to make a compound verb basically. And why this is important to note the compound verb that results from combining these two is because the verb hajimeru itself is a transitive verb. The intransitive version of hajimeru is hajimaru, and that's intransitive like I just said. So of course if we were using English, hajimeru as a transitive verb would mean to start something else, like to start a car, and hajimaru, the intransitive version, would mean to start basically yourself starting up. However, in this grammar construct, we're always using hajimeru, the transitive version of the verb, but since it's being combined with the particular verb that we're starting to do into a compound verb, the resulting compound verb is going to be transitive or intransitive regardless of hajimeru being a transitive verb itself. It's going to be completely dependent on the verb that we're using with hajimeru in this grammar construct. So if that verb that we choose to express our sentence is transitive, then the resulting compound verb is going to be transitive as well. And if that verb is intransitive, then the resulting compound verb is going to be intransitive as well. Here in the actual grammar form, pre-mas-form of the verb that we're using plus hajimeru, we see that that variable verb, whatever it is the first verb that appears in the form. So we're going to call it the first verb, and hajimeru is going to be the second verb because it's always going to be after it. And so when we have a compound verb like this, its transitiveness or intransitiveness is always going to depend on the first verb. And in this grammar construct, it's always going to be that one that we're using with hajimeru and not hajimeru. And the important distinction to make here is that this idea of the whole verb depending on not both of the verbs that are used to make it, but only one of them, is very similar to how a sentence's politeness or impoliteness is dependent on the second clause, the main clause, and not the subordinate clause at all. But when we're talking about that sentence politeness, the sentence is dependent on the second clause, and here the verb, the compound verb, is dependent on the first verb. So that's a pretty big difference here. We definitely don't want to mix these two ideas up and think that the first clause of the sentence is the one that decides the whole sentence's politeness or impoliteness, and the second verb of the compound verb is the one that decides its transitiveness or intransitiveness. That's the wrong combination. And so the last thing to note here is that this grammar construct, pre-mas-form of a verb plus hajimeru, is commonly used with both transitive and intransitive verbs. That might sound like common sense, but when we go into our next lesson and we cover how to say to finish doing something with the verb owaru instead, we'll see that that one, for some whatever reason, is not commonly used with both intransitive and transitive verbs, but rather transitive verbs. So that's definitely a lot of information to soak up into your brain right away. I wouldn't worry about it extremely too much. Let's just go into the examples to get a more simpler idea, more intuitive idea of this grammar construct, and feel free, of course, to review that whole tidbit of information that was just mentioned afterwards. So for our first example sentence, we have the very simple line, Ima shukudai o shihajimemasu. And what this translates to is, right now I will start doing my homework, or I'll start doing my homework right now. Let's break down the sentence bit by bit. First up we have ima. Ima means now. It's kind of just a time marker. Right after ima, we probably have our most used direct object noun in examples in this whole video series thus far, shukudai, which means homework. We have o right after it, marking shukudai as the direct object. We have suru in its pre-mas form, which is just she here. Then right after she, we have hajimeru. Here hajimeru is in its present polite tense, so it's going to be hajimemasu. So hajimemasu modifies she, which means to do, so basically this translates to start doing. And that modifies homework, so to start doing what? To start doing homework. Then that is complemented by the time marker at the beginning of the sentence, which is ima, which means now. So now start doing homework, we can just interpret that as I will start doing my homework now. 今宿題をし始めます. For our next example sentence, we have the line ジムで運動し始めました. And what this line translates to is basically just I started exercising at the gym. Breaking down the sentence, first up we have jimu, which means gym. We have de, marking gym as the location at which activity is occurring. The activity itself is the verbal noun undou suru, which means to exercise. Here we're going to change suru into its pre-mas-Form shi to be modified by hajimeru, which is going to be conjugated into its past polite tense, which is hajimemashita. So altogether again, jimu de undou shi hajimemashita just means I started exercising at the gym. For our last example sentence, we have the line このアニメを見始めてください. And what this line translates to is please start watching this anime series. Let's break down the sentence bit by bit. First up, we have kono anime. Kono means this, anime means anime. So this anime, this animation, we have o marking anime as the direct object of the verb miru, which means to watch, but here it's in its pre-mas form, which is just me. Then we succeed that by hajimeru, but hajimeru here is in its te form, hajimete, because it's also being used in another grammar construct, which is the te form of a verb plus the phrasing kudasai to mean please do that verb. So hajimete kudasai means please start. Please start what? Well, hajimete is modifying miru, which is to watch. So mi hajimete kudasai means please start watching, and that is modifying anime, this anime. So please start watching this anime. Kono anime o mi hajimete kudasai, and that is please start watching this anime series, please. And so yeah, that is how we use the pre-mas form of a particular verb plus the other verb hajimeru, which means to start, to mean to start doing that verb. And you should have been able to see how we can further modify hajimeru to make it into the past tense or the present or whatever is needed to convey the meaning that we're trying to express in the speech that we're making come out of our mouths. And yeah, language is very important.